Now, did we witness a major network bust a sexist move right before our eyes? Plus, these students were doing their job, or were they snooping in somebody else's business? Stick around, y'all. The chat starts now.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the chat. I'm Angelia Savage, and we've got Henny, Melissa, and Angie all joining the panel today on this very happy Friday. Everybody's ready and excited to get into the weekend, right?
Oh my goodness. With this weather? Are you kidding me?
Ready for some golf.
I'm putting on my days of Dukes today, baby.
Oh,
Don't let the sauce fool you. I do have some Dukes.
It's a little cool out for those.
That's okay. I'll make a lot of money.
Oh my gosh. All right, there's the side job. All right.
Happy weekend.
Here we go.
I know. All right. And we're starting off actually today because we've got some sad news, cheerful, on a not so cheerful note, actually. It's kind of hard not to talk about what the whole world seems to be paying close attention to today, the recent events happening last night in Syria. The U.S. launched 59 missiles from the Mediterranean Sea last night. President Trump says the strike was in response to a suspected chemical weapon attack that killed at least 75 people earlier this week. We've seen a lot of people commenting on social media, and many people are worried about what's going to happen next. So, ladies, what's your initial reactions? Were you staying up last night watching?
Yeah.
I was pretty glued to the TV last night. About 11 o'clock, I think, is when it came on the network, and I was kind of surprised. What about you?
Definitely. You know, I don't think anyone could fail to be moved by these images of these little kids dying after this chemical weapons attack launched by the Syrian dictator Assad. And so it seems that President Trump was, and he said publicly, was equally moved and felt that the U.S. had a moral authority to intervene, right? But at the same time, of course, Donald Trump campaigned on staying out of foreign intervention. So his detractors are immediately calling attention to that, saying that he criticized Barack Obama for failing to intervene in Syria. All of that said, though, when you see the pictures of these children, the entire world their hearts are broken over this. And so in terms of what comes next, I think that there is trepidation that military action, further steps are coming. And it's not as though we haven't been involved in the Middle East all this time, but airstrikes on a sovereign nation is a whole new ballgame.
I just don't like the blame game that's going on. I mean, you know, I'm a Trump supporter, absolutely, but I don't like Trump blaming the Obama administration. I don't like the Syrians blaming the rebels. I don't like the rebels blaming ISIS. Let's just take the blame off the table. Let's deal with what we have to deal with at hand, and let's move forward to try and alleviate this situation, because either way you slice it, this is not anything that we ever want on U.S. soil or any child or family to have to endure.
And it is, you know, kind of creeping in. You hear about just how at sea Russia is closing in on our U.S. ships, and that makes it a little scary. I mean, so when you talk about trepidation, you talk about worry. You know, when you watch, they are calling it the ultimate chess game, and, you know, knowing we've got superpowers number 1 and 2, U.S. being number 1 and Russia obviously being number 2, this is really scary. I can't believe that Russia continues to side with Syria, despite the lies, despite the breaking of international law. I mean, at what point do you say, hey, look, you know, I know we've been together in this, but you've kind of broken my trust. And that's the part, to me, that's where I'm hoping diplomacy will win through in all of this.
And I think that's why there's so much concern about Vladimir Putin, seen by so many as a murderous thug who has geopolitical interests in Syria that involve destabilizing the West. Russia's involvement in all this is key. And so as the investigation into possible collusion among the Trump team with Russia continues, watch for these two stories to keep intersecting, I think, is what we'll continue to see.
I want to see what happens, though. I want to see if Russia is truly on our side, if they're playing both sides, because right now it just seems like they're playing a little bit of both sides, and I want to know where they're, you know, where they really lie, if they are on our side and are, you know, on our team or not. So this is,
I would say
like
definitely
really
not.
Interesting.
I think
feel like
they're defined as a hostile foreign power by pretty much anyone who follows geopolitics in this country. They are not on our side.
I just can't believe this is happening. Like, is this America? Like, it's sad, it's sad. But we did post this question on the chat's Facebook page, and I want to read some of the comments from a gentleman named, well, I'm assuming a gentleman named Cameron. He said, good thing he got that, referencing to congressional approval, there you see on the screen. Oh, wait. Gary says he's working to stabilize their home countries. Refugees do not want to leave their region. They want to stay in their homelands. Rebuild, not rehome. And Kenneth says any atrocities against humanity should be dealt with swiftly and decisively. That's the only way to stop these tragedies, lest they become the norm.
And I think, honestly, I think President Trump was sincerely moved by that argument. I think you could see it in his face and in this swift decision. You know, is this a smart long-term strategy for us in terms of our interests in that region? I think that's the question we're going to continue to hear discussed.
What's next is the key.
Yeah. Alrighty. Well, there's some controversy about how the news of these strikes was actually reported. Fans of Rachel Maddow have expressed their disgust at what some are calling a sexist NBC after the anchor was replaced on the show by Brian Williams. Now, the news was covered by Williams as he is the breaking news anchor for the network, meaning that during major events, he takes over the airwaves no matter who may be hosting at that time. But of course, some still say Maddow should have been allowed to report it since it happened during her show. Now, of course, with everything in this whole wide world right now, because we're so sensitive, there's going to be controversy with everything. But if this is the man's job, if this is what the rules are, why are we making something out of this?
I'm sure it's in his contract, too.
I'm sure it is in that big fat contract.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you think? Because on the one hand, I'm sure it's contractual, and he is an excellent breaking news anchor. On the other hand, he got fired from NBC News for lying or at least exaggerating his exploits on the battlefield following the soldiers. Not only that, Rachel Maddow wrote a book about American foreign intervention in foreign wars called Drift. She's seen as an expert in this stuff, and she's not given to making things up on the air.
I think they're both great journalists, and they both could have handled it. However, because it is in his contract, I'm assuming it's in his contract, it's his job, it's what he do, he take over breaking news. It's what America is accustomed to looking at, to watching him with breaking news. Come on, people, let's just let that slide. We got bigger fish to fry
exactly
right now. Please, spare me.
Yeah.
Well, I think MSNBC is probably one of the least sexist networks out there. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, you know, if you put them up against everybody else, they're probably one of the least sexist, to be honest. But, I mean, with that being said, I mean, I think Rachel Maddow is, I mean, she's great at what she does. She's a liberal. She leans left, so I don't agree with pretty much anything she says, but she's great at what she does. She's great at reporting news from that angle, and I think she's really good. But putting Brian Williams in there, obviously it was in his contract to do that, and every network did this last night. Every network shut their people down. I mean, Fox News, Tucker Carlson taken off the news, and they put on their breaking news expert.
I was just about to say this wasn't a sexist issue.
It wasn't
just
that
if
network.
It was male, female, or panda. He would have been replaced with the anchor that was told to do it.
Let's talk about, I mean, networks who are sexist. Let's talk about somebody like a Lifetime. I mean, somebody who actually shows...
Lifetime is sexist?
Well, you think about everything that they show. They show women as crime victims all the time, poor women, and then they...
There's men too. Wait a minute. Those little stories
are painting women in a negative light. So
imagine Lifetime.
But they're not after Lifetime much quicker than I would MSNBC.
But they're not a news network.
I totally agree with that. But I'm just saying, as a sexist network, I mean, there's other networks to go after rather than MSNBC, I think. But, you know, I don't know. That's my opinion.
All right. Well, speaking of journalists, a group of high school journalism students in Pittsburgh, Kansas, is getting national attention for investigating their own principal. All right, they put their journalism skills to work because these students decided to dig into the credentials of the newly hired leader of the school, and they hit journalistic gold, uncovering that she took her master's and doctoral degrees from an unaccredited online school. Now, while the principal said she got those degrees before the university lost accreditation, she still stepped down thanks to their shoe leather and investigating. The students are being praised for their work in newspapers, even in the New York Times, and, you know, hey, I'm all about this. I wrote for my high school paper. I've been a journalist for decades. I think it's great that these kids did such a good job that they uncovered something that would have a positive impact on their school.
I mean, I'm with you. I wrote for my middle school paper. I wrote for my high school paper. I wrote for my college paper. And we never got juicy stories like this.
No,
Ever, you know?
We never got anything that good.
High school kids really were able to impact their whole community, and it's pretty awesome. And
I don't know. I would feel some kind of way knowing that I was the cause. I contributed to the cause of my principal, who is my leader, my role model at the school.
But she
for her to
wasn't.
step down, well, she was. Principals are supposed to be.
It was going to be a new hire. No,
Yeah,
they
she
didn't
never
even know
even
her.
started.
She never started.
They were doing this just to welcome her.
They were vetting her before she was hired.
Oh, no, that's not the story. Okay, but
Yeah.
I would still feel a little weird. I would probably feel a little guilty-ish, maybe.
Why?
I don't
Really?
know.
She
Yeah,
misrepresented
Oh, I thought it was
herself.
great. I think they uncovered what needed to be uncovered. I think they did their due diligence, and especially as young girls, young newspaper writers, what an amazing feat to find all of this information to uncover. I think that's kind of cool. I mean, it was finding a needle in a haystack, but I mean, you were talking about your days of being a newspaper writer. We only had Encyclopedia Britannica.
Exactly.
And
Yes,
they
we
have
did.
social
They have the
media,
internet.
so they can find that
They
stuff
have it so much
lickety
easier,
split.
yeah.
I'm sure, but
They
you
have
know.
so many more resources, but still, they
had to
totally
do it?
earned it. They earned it.
Yeah, but I was interesting reading the article, though. There was Marjorie Griffin, which was on the interview committee, and hearing her thoughts on the whole interview. She was interviewing this woman, and she said that she felt uneasy. The woman was uneasy during the interview when they were actually interviewing, and she thought she felt uncomfortable whenever they started asking about her credentials. And so
And now we see why.
maybe Marjorie should have been the one to step up and look into it rather than being schooled by her school children.
And you would think by this point people would realize you can't lie on your resume.
Yeah.
You
But you know what?
can't
People-
lie on your resume. Someone
been
is
doing
going
that
to
for
Google
ages,
you
honey.
and find out.
But
It
like she
always
said,
comes out.
You know, our generation, you know, or not my generation, the generation before me,
Before,
they
yeah.
might have been able to get away
Exactly,
with it.
and they
but
did.
not now.
And they did.
But hello, McFly, when
Yeah.
are you going to clue in
Yeah.
that all it takes is a group
These
of high school
days you
students
can't.
to call
That's
you out?
right.
You know?
These days you can't and you should not. But back in the
The
day,
internet's written in ink.
oh, there are so many people I know of that lied like a rug
Right,
on
and-
their resume, and they got away with it.
And
Well,
how
they
about-
got by with it because it's not right in God's eye. It'll catch up to them, but they got away with it. They
no
got
one
by
gets
with
away
it back
with it.
then.
How
Right?
about plagiarism? I think that would be a really tough thing to get away with now in college.
Oh,
I'd be
there's no way.
terrified
My
to actually
husband's
not
a
credit
professor,
someone.
and when kids plagiarize, he has to report them.
Ooh.
There's no
tough
choice.
call.
He has to report them, and he says it's really obvious too. When
duh.
I mean, you can't miss it when it's plagiarized. So not a good idea either.
All right, can't cheat all the way around, not on your resume and not on your school papers. So still to come on the chat, what happens when your purpose becomes your passion? Our first guest shares how it happened to her when we come back.